Hey, are we live? Not sure. I think maybe we are. Um, we're out there. Give me a holler back. Check real quick here just to make sure. Seems like maybe we are. Well, I think we're gonna go for it anyway. Just to see what we can get. It's kind of the late show tonight. Sorry, I was just trying to make sure if we're officially live. Yeah, the late show tonight, folks. Dad here, Friday night, kid in bed. Isn't something that comes easy. So for me tonight, finally getting to this a little bit later than I wanted to, but nonetheless, it's Dad's time now. Anyway, hope you're having a good week wherever you are, and that you're having a chance to make art and make design and create something fun, and that you're having a chance to do what you love, and that you're passionate about what you do. So I thought tonight, I've been kind of toying around with this idea of maybe doing something that's kind of creature related, or some sort of creature, maybe quadruped is what I'm thinking. And whenever doing a creature that you're going to get into and that you're going to spend some time on, you definitely want to know as much anatomy as you can. And so to start out, I thought that I would start out by doing a basic kind of skeletal drawing, and I'm going to go with a sort of combination. I've got some references here in front of me of lion, cat, panther, jaguar, and I'm going to start there with my anatomy and do a little bit with the skeletal drawing first, and then maybe work over the top. Now, I don't really want to create those exact creatures. I actually want to try to create something original and something maybe a little bit different with my own spin on it. But in order to do a creature study and do a creature study well, you got to kind of start from the ground up. Unless you've been drawing these things more frequently, perhaps all the time, in which case you have their exact anatomy in mind. It's always good to kind of start from the ground up. So I think to start off, what I'm going to do is a little bit of a drawing of just skeletal structure, basic cat skeletal structure, and then work from there, and perhaps do a drawing over the top. So I thought tonight I would just sort of start out with skeletal drawing and see how far I actually get with working over the top of that. Maybe I'll actually get as far as working up a sketch. So we'll see how much time. Again, it's the late show tonight, and I apologize. I've just had a hell of a week. I just got back for some travel last week, so I'm finally getting around to doing another stream. Anyway, any new news on my side of things? Had a great vacation. Had a chance to spend some time with my wife and son, and we actually went out of the country, and it was a great trip. We had saved for a while and found ourselves some good prices on tickets and took it. So we had a chance to travel and have a good time. So anyway, I think I will start out now, and I'll just go ahead and get going with something skeletal. And again, I'm kind of working from a cat. Big cats. A little bit bigger cats here. So I like to kind of start out by getting an overall proportions down. Again, I'm not too concerned about being exact with the cat, but I'm going to kind of work a little bit off their general proportions and then see if I can adapt something maybe of my own. And again, this is going to be more of a skeletal study and working my way up from there. Being mammals, they have very similar bone structure to our own. I think they're +2 bones. I know they have maybe one more set of ribs or something than we do. It's been a little while since I've been up on all of my animal anatomy. Start out with some sort of big structures of the scapula. And I'm keeping it kind of loose. As really what I'm looking for here is a framework to work over the top of. And if I distort things along the way, that's okay too. That ends up becoming sort of part of my design, is to tweak their bones and their anatomy to be a little bit more maybe the way that I want it to be. Do a couple of ribs here. Give myself a little bit of a ballpark. I'll come back and work in little bits of more detail. Get some sort of bigger vertebra. Working back here. Having some real nice weather here, but where we traveled to, it was a bit warm. A bit warm to say the least. It was up in the 90s and rather humid. So hopefully wherever you're at, you're getting some good weather this summer. Normally where we live here, and I'm here in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, we have pretty cool weather in the summer, but that has more to do with the peninsula creating kind of its own little weather pattern. It's weird. Always bring a jacket. Always bring a jacket. It's always good to get some sort of real life reference, as real life reference will always make your designs more believable and will feel more believable, even if you end up making subtle little changes that are unique to your own design. That's fine. Structure, anatomy, very difficult, complex stuff to do. And the more you do it, the more you know what to look for sure. But it always helps to get some references. Down here in the lumbar vertebra. Looks like most cats have somewhere around 7 lumbar vertebrae if I'm kind of looking at their shape right. Whereas humans have 5. I believe 5. I know it's 7 and 12. Yeah, and 5. Cats look like they have closer to maybe 7 before we go into the tail, or maybe 6 before they go into the tail. And then ribs, we're looking at, 12 ribs or 13, 12 filled ribs with maybe 1 floating rib. So 13 lumbar vertebra. So we're going to get a little bit of kind of a floating one back here. And then of course these lumbar kind of curve around. And again, some of the connection points, I'm not doing this for purposes of detailing the bones exactly. What I want is just an outside creature from the, a design from the outside. I'm not so concerned about the exact connection points of vertebra and ribs into the vertebra. I'm just more interested in something that feels right. So that's, to me, I'm more concerned with what the outside will eventually look like, but it definitely does not hurt to do pay attention to some of the details as we go here. So let's see, what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Nine, 10, 11, 12, and maybe 13 is sort of back up underneath here. So here's the sort of scapula sitting in front. So I've kind of got these bones here. And a bit of this pelvis here. And there's the joint, the side facing closest. And then I'm going to head into the tail. Looks like I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of 22 bones through the tail, which is a lot. So I don't know if I'm going to do all of those, but I do want to kind of give the indication of a tail. So I'm going to loosely count, let's put it that way. Kind of tube-like vertebra through the tail. And again, I'm not sure how far into the tail the spinal cord actually goes. That's a very good question. It's almost like I think they're just more bones or cartilage. Either way, I think I'm not sure the spinal cord obviously runs the entire end, so we probably get more into just bone and cartilage towards the end. Somebody out there actually knows. Farm it in. Let me know. How close am I? But yeah. So I teach an anatomy class, human anatomy, which I'm a lot more confident in. Which I actually have my students create a creature based off of human anatomy, but they, after having studied the human anatomy first, then they go back and sort of apply their design to the skeleton, working around a human skeleton. So it gives them a chance to learn about human anatomy first and an idea of how complicated it is and beautiful and amazing. And then they can begin to create from the ground up something that is their own unique vision. But if I had to give one more assignment from there, it would probably be to take it into a quadruped and study a little bit more animal anatomy, which I have taught, but not for a while. That's called the fetlock. Well, actually that's probably more of let's see, hips, knee. This is probably more of the ankle, so I'm not sure how that works. I know how it is on a horse, not so sure on a cat. So we got our tarsals, and then our phalanges. Again, I'm not doing a hardcore anatomical study here, but I do want a groundwork that feels somewhat based on reality. I'm only going to use this to pretty much work over the top of. So as long as I got some basic structures and proportions in the right place, it's going to be enough to help me out. These are more of the lumbar vertebra sticking up here. looks like we're looking more like 1, 6, 7, 8, 9. Give me 1 second. I'll be back in a second. Back. Sorry about that. So might have to run this a little bit shorter than I thought tonight. All right, so let's see. It's gonna probably have 1 lumbar for each rib cage, so Okay, so what I kind of have done here is patched up the vertebra a little bit better with my ribs. You know, not perfect, but this is just my understudy. So from here, I'm getting basically, it looks like close to 7 lumbar, starting somewhere right about in here, right about in there. And from there, I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you know, 8 lumbar on this. And then it looks like I'll probably end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12, maybe 13. 12 connected ribs with 13 extra, so maybe I could throw in, you know, 13 lumbar in here, which would then, I'm still aiming for, you know, roughly mammals are roughly 7 cervical vertebra, 12 lumbar, and humans it's 5. I'm sorry, I'm saying lumbar, and I'm totally wrong on that. 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, and 5 lumbar, but I think I'm aiming for something that's probably more like 12 with a 13th floating rib, so it'd be essentially 13 thoracic, and maybe somewhere along the lines of like 7 or 8 lumbar, and then 7 cervical vertebra. So somewhere in there. It looks like, you know, cats are a little close to 12, although I have to say, it looks like in lions, from a couple of references I have, that lions have 13 ribs. And I know this to be true of certain mammals, that they have more ribs than humans do. So that could be essentially 13 ribs, which might mean 13 thoracic. And then I would probably cover more like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lumbar. We'll say these would be the lumbar. And then maybe I'd work on 7 cervical. So I will try to get those kind of into position here. But I got a little bit of negotiating to do. So I think I'm going to pull out this one. And I'm going to kind of make these vertebrae move backwards, maybe towards the ribs a little bit, so they're connecting somewhat behind the scapula there. And then of course my spinal cord is kind of running back up into the head, in which case, let's see if this is the beginning of the thoracic, and this would be 7 cervical. So like humans, one of the protrusions that we have on the back of our neck is a little bit of a higher 7th cervical vertebra. So that one's a little bit more protruding there than the rest. Again, a little bit more with the dorsal fins here. Not fins, but probably were once fins, depending on where you come from and what you believe. But it's pretty evident that our vertebra evolved from fish, or something where we had a dorsal fin. A lot of great creatures have come out of the idea that we have evolved from something definitely more animal-like, more creature-like, and there are signs in our bodies of previous evolution. So it looks like as we get towards the vertebra, towards the top, I'm noticing in a couple of different references I'm looking here in different types of cats, there's a bit of an exaggerated vertebra here towards the top, and I'm not exactly sure what that's all about. I'll have to do a little bit more reading on that. It looks like somewhere around the second vertebra there's a little bit of an expansion. I don't know. I'm seeing it in a couple of different references I have up. So I don't exactly know what that is, but that's okay. I'll do my best to emulate, again, real life with the idea that I will kind of make it my own anyway. So it's all right. It's always good to look at real life as inspiration and then form your own construction from that. All right. Take a little drink of water here. So, starting with a little bit of the cat skull. We're looking at something that's probably going to have a little bit more of the canines, the tooth, the bigger tooth up front. Pretty high zygomatic. Sort of the elongated nose, a little bit of the eyes. Sort of a short brow there. And of course, the idea that maybe ears would be up this way. You know, looking at these sort of skeletal faces and skeletal structures, it really is not that hard to start imagining something else. Pointier head. And I think this is where I kind of want to depart from a regular cat-like skull. Again, just like ours, kind of coming in from the zygomatic into the maxilla. this up and clean this up just a little bit. You know, sometimes we go in kind of loose and then we clarify as we find fine shapes. I think the main thing is getting relative proportion size of the head. I'm going to have the face turning a little bit, obviously, forward. Nasal passages, nasi, probably be levitors and things all around the face. Canines. Not a huge underbite here. I'm going to give it a little time, maybe come back to the head part a little bit. See if I can perfect a few more things here. Bones are sort of wrapping and forming the sternum and the breastplate, so they are definitely changing their direction a bit. Bit of the illusion of the wrapping going on. I don't know how much I'm going to actually try to create too much dimension out of the ribs on the other side. Mostly because I know I'm drawing over the top, so I don't know how much I need to see both sides of each rib. It might be a bit much. My intention here is not to do a beautiful skeletal depiction, but more for purposes of designing over the top. Okay, getting there. Get the shape of my bones a little bit closer. Still got to work on a little bit of a back leg as well. It's right behind here. I'm going to come up a little bit higher. Straighten that leg out a bit. Tarsals and the metatarsals. I think I got to bring some of these down a little bit. Get my proportions a little bit better. You know, usually whenever I'm creating some sort of life form, I always start with a wire sort of framework just to get the gesture down before committing to too much anatomical description. And there's always sort of time to thicken things up a bit. So I figure that I'm probably going to have some ground here. Way back. All right, folks. Well, this kind of concludes the beginnings of my rough. I think I'm going to finish this a little bit more and then come back and I'll finish part two, where I'm going to work back over the top with a little bit of a design, and you'll be able to see how I work over the top of something like this and the importance of these structures being in place. You know, I'd probably spend a little bit more time correcting these things, but I will be back and continue to work on these at another time. Unfortunately, duty calls, so I do have to run at this time. Hope you guys have a good night. I'll check back in. Thanks for drawing with me for a little while. I hope you have a good weekend, and keep drawing, stay passionate, and we'll catch you on the next one. Look out for part 2.